It's the last week of 2024. There's barely any time left for the new year, yet somehow France managed to squeeze in another loss. Right at the end of 2024, France just lost a military base in the Central African nation of Chad. It's quite the way to end a miserable year for the country. Let's show you some scenes from Chad yesterday. French military vehicles and aircraft lining up for one last photo before driving off into the desert. The vehicles were stationed at the Faya-Largeau military base. France built this base in the 1940s. It has been central to their African strategy for 8 decades. But yesterday, France handed over the base to Chad. There were about 30 French soldiers at this base. They were the ones driving off. They're headed about 780 kilometers south to Chad's capital, N'Djamena, where they will board a flight back home. Soldiers from other bases will follow soon. There are about 100 in eastern Chad at a base in the city of Abéché. They will be the next to leave. After that, French troops stationed at N'Djamena will also depart. France had about 1,000 troops in this country, but last month Chad tore up the defense pact and gave the French 6 weeks to vacate. Chad is the latest African nation to give France the boot after Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger. The 3 West African nations kicked French troops out over the last 2 years. Military coups took place in all these 3 countries. The new military juntas decided to sever ties with France and join hands with Russia instead. Russian mercenaries replaced French soldiers in other Sahel states. Moscow is in talks with N'Djamena as well. But for now, Chad says it will handle its military affairs alone. It says it is reclaiming its sovereignty.
La décision de retrait des forces françaises est une décision.
The decision to withdraw French troops is an exclusively sovereign decision with regard to Chad, and we felt that after several decades of independence and proclamation of the Republic, it was no longer useful to have a foreign military base in our homeland.
C'est plus utile d'avoir une base militaire étrangère dans notre pays.
Chad is kicking France out because of sovereignty. The 3 junta-ruled Sahel states switched ties to Russia. Both resulted in the same thing, France losing its hold in Africa, and this has become a trend. 2024 was an especially bad year for France because Chad's leader actually has good ties with Paris. It isn't like the junta chiefs elsewhere. But even an ally like him decided that he had enough of the French troop presence. It's a similar situation in Senegal, another former French colony which shares decent ties with Paris, but it also wants French troops out. So what is Paris doing about all of this? How is it ensuring that it has a better 2025? President Emmanuel Macron says that he has a plan.
Nous avons voulu faire évoluer notre modèle.
We wanted to further develop our model. Where we had established historical bases in many countries, we wanted to rethink our presence by co-constructing a partnership and cooperation with many countries, expression of needs, training, equipment, intelligence cooperation, one-off operations, but we are in the process of changing the logic.
Coopération en matière de renseignement, opérations ponctuelles.
He says France is changing its model, changing its logic when it comes to military bases. There's one problem though. Macron said this while he was in Djibouti last week. He said this as he touted a greater role for the French base there. He wants to use it for power projection in Africa. Talk about being tone deaf. Macron also lauded shared cultural and linguistic values between France and Djibouti. You can't make this up. Here's a message for all former colonizers. The reason we have a shared language is because you colonized us, because you forced us to learn your language. We share culture because you forced it down our throats. Macron's moves show just why France is losing its grip. The African nations want sovereignty and dignity. They want France to acknowledge the past and treat them with respect. Until France does that, they will keep losing their African bases.